Our next presenter is a force in and of himself. And you know how that is? Because we all know him just by his first name, Mitch. Ladies and gentlemen, Mitch Sylvester. You're still here, right? Okay.
Well, hello everybody. Hey, Mitch. I'm very, very honored to be at the second powerful most CA board in Alberta.
And thank you for conceding number one to us.
I'm very proud of my group today. We sold 290 tickets. We bought 290 tickets to the AGM.
Unbelievable. I think Bonneville sends the most number of members to the AGM. Although with 5,428, there's got to be someone real close.
I know. Rimby Rocky Mountain House is like 70 tickets behind us.
Okay, fantastic.
So yeah, awesome.
How about Lacombe?
Next, actually.
Yeah.
So I had a bet with Tim Oven that I would get more people to the AGM this year, even though it's in his backyard.
Okay, so how many buses are you going to take down there?
3 for sure.
All right. Mitch, your time is running clear, but you got a lot to say. I'll leave you to it.
Okay, so I'm Mitch Sylvester. I'm from Bonneville. I'm the head of the Bonneville Cold Lake St. Paul CA Board. I'm a TPA director. I used to be with the APP until I became a CA president, and I couldn't be partisan or involved with politics to do that, so I got out of that. So basically, I wear any hat that it takes for me to win. That's the deal. Winning is what it's all about for me. Can I have my first slide, please? Second one. Okay, so that's who I am, that's what I do. We've been winning battles from the very beginning of the time we got into politics. So what can you do as an individual? Quite a lot. Actually, don't take it for granted that you can't accomplish anything, because I'm living proof that you can. Here's the thing. I remember the day when I stood up in front of a group in Bonneville at a meeting without knowing how I was going to do this. And I said, we have to fire the premier and we have to replace the board. And then, 3 days later, somebody came up to me and said, hey, have you met this? Have you ever heard of David Parker? And of course, my nature is I want to win. So I went and found this guy, and away we went, and we accomplished all that. Never been done before. That's why. The thing that I find with us and people is they don't think big enough. And if we're going to regain our freedoms, we've got a real battle, so we have to think as big as we can think. Here's what's happening in Alberta and in Canada. That's the amount of money in billions of dollars that we give to Ottawa, $244 billion in 15 years. And that's how much Quebec collected, $327 billion in that same amount of time. That does not include, I'm also head of Alberta First Pension, that does not include the $3 billion a year we give to Ottawa in pension. So that's another $3 billion times 15, add $45 billion to that. Plus another $1 billion a year that we overcontribute in employment insurance. So there's another $15 billion. So all of a sudden, Alberta is batting way above its level. Next slide, please.
Violent crime is up 40% under this Prime Minister. Auto theft tripled in Toronto. Housing costs have doubled, and none of the promises have come to fruition. One ArriveScan company received $250 million in contracts. Let's get this straight. It's a company with 4 employees, headquartered in the basement of a tiny cottage. They got IT contracts even though they admit they do no IT work. $250 million? WTF. Where's the funds?
More and more people are compromising nutrition due to high food prices.
It's extremely hard because there are large grocery stores, large grocery store monopolies that are trying to milk the maximum profit.
A new survey found nearly half of Canadians have reduced the quantity of meat they buy. while 45% are prioritizing cost over nutritional value, with consequences extending well beyond their wallet.
Canadians are actually concerned about their own health due to higher food prices over the long term. That's 3 out of 5 Canadians, which is a lot.
678,000 smackers. That's how much of your money Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has spent on vacations this year alone. Must be nice.
Ten's plan will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Meanwhile, the NDP Liberal Prime Minister has raised taxes on gas, heat, and groceries, raised taxes on paychecks, raised income taxes on middle class and lower income Canadians, raised taxes on small businesses. He keeps raising taxes. It's enough to drive a man to drink. But he wants to tax that too. On April 1st, another 5% increase on beer, wine, and spirits that will kill jobs for those workers and raise costs on consumers.
The leader of the official opposition doesn't care about facts.
Right from the Parliamentary Budget Officer's numbers, he says $1,674 is the cost of the average Ontario family, and the rebate is only $1,047. So Ontarians are paying more than they get back, just like British Columbians, where the NDP government is administering the federally mandated carbon tax. And according to the Vancouver Sun today, the budget presented by the NDP in that province says the carbon tax will raise $9 billion over 3 years and only pay back $3 billion. What happened in 2015? I know, he happened, Mr. Speaker. How can we make him unhappen and stop the crime?
So what we're talking about there is money and power and corruption. So what we have is an absolutely corrupt government, a lawless government. Not only is he stealing money from us with impunity, Trudeau thinks he's a king. 250, 60 million there. Do you remember when Freeland did that presentation or the senator questioned her and she had $2 billion of it going to a, as of yet, unformed company, and it was open-ended. It was going to end up being $15 billion. How about during COVID? They printed $575 billion. Out of that $575 billion, they acknowledge that there's $32 billion missing. So what's happening to the money? There's a relationship between governments and people. Tyrants all steal money. They all enrich themselves. There's a direct correlation between how rich they are and how poor you're becoming. And that's the way things work. They're taxing us into oblivion. They're doing it on purpose. So if you're wondering why we need an Alberta Bill of Rights, it's the first step to protecting ourselves. That's the deal. That's why it's there. Mr. Carney, I'm also head of Alberta First Pension. So I think we got $335 billion there that we can grab. I don't know if you're aware of the situation, but let me explain it to you in a couple sentences. We pay $9 billion to the federal government. Our seniors collect $6 billion. There's an overage of $3 billion there, and it's annual. It's going to continue for 25 to 30 more years. This overage could be taken in giving our seniors a 40% increase in pay. That's just one of the things that we could do with it. That would still leave us $600 million surplus every year. There was a prenup signed early in the 60s, in 1965, 1966. Ontario was concerned that they were going to get taken advantage of because they were the biggest contributors in Canada. So there's basically a prenup, and the prenup says this: if you contribute more than you take, that money will go into a fund for you, and then you will be able to take it back with interest when you so choose. That number for Alberta today is $335 billion. The reason that they're not giving us that number is because it's $335 billion. And there's been 3 actuarial reports done, and the last 2, well, they got them done, they came to the same conclusion. So our biggest objection at the 50 or 60 town halls that we've done is that keep your hands off our pension, right? I mean, that's what they say, that's what their signs say. So bring in Mark Carney, the king of green, a banker. First thing he does, he's been there, what, 2 months? He said he's going to take $50 billion out of the pension fund and transfer it to his own company. No lie, honest to God. They make 1.5% on that money is what it costs to service that money, so invest it and take care of it. So $500 million a year is what they're going to pay themselves to do that. And they're worried about us having our hands on their pension. Actually, to tell you the honest to God truth, the only way, and I'm digressing here, the only way that we can take care of a pension is to bring it home here, but we can take care of it.
Here, here.
Our MLAs are accessible. My MLA sits right beside me at every CA board meeting. He works with us. Eric does the same thing. That's the way it should be. They should be working with us, and we can talk to them. Next slide, please. Okay, so Canada's changing, and they're changing it for us, and they're doing it on purpose. They're bringing in mass immigration. What for? There's only one reason to bring in mass immigration. I'm not against immigration. I'm against 5 times more than we need immigration. I have wonderful Filipino employees that I brought into Alberta and actually into Canada years ago. They worked for me for years. They've now moved on. Wonderful people. Had to have them. Couldn't get people to work. I'm from an oil town. Oil companies pay big wages. Sporting goods stores don't pay as big wages as oil companies, so we had to bring in people to help us get the work done. So that was marvelous. But the end goal here is to change our politics. That's absolutely the end goal. Next slide, please. All right, has the Charter Bill of Rights failed us? Absolutely. Next slide. What has happened? Every single right and freedom that we've enjoyed has been basically broken. The one thing that you get as you age is perspective. So, and it's the only good thing about aging, actually. So, what happens is, once you get perspective, you see what things used to be like. For things to be happening like they're happening today in my dad's time, it's unconscionable. Bill C-21, red flag law. This has to do with guns. They're going to take it, and they make it law, it's already law today, that this is a tattletale bill, where you can tell on him and say he's an unsafe gun owner, and the police can go in his house and take his guns, and then he's going to have to go prove that he's not a guilty person. Wow. That's exactly the opposite of what's going on. How else are they going to take their guns from us? There has to be a method. Now that's the other part of that is it's intimidating. So you'll be looking around to see what your neighbors are going to say about you because it's going to become a punishment. Amendment to the Broadcasting Act. They have basically bought our media. Trudeau gave $700 million to himself so that he could buy media. I'll guarantee you that he's taken a lot more money than that because our information is now all coming from one place. And that's not just here. I mean, that's national and international. You see it all over the place. Next thing, Online News Act. You can go to jail for life for hate speech now. Okay? That's where we're going. I'm painting you a picture, and it's a bleak picture, and I'm explaining to you that this is where we are, and most people refuse to acknowledge the fact that this is where we are. This is death by 1,000 cuts. This is what's happening here. Next slide. So, vaccine mandates, Invoking the Emergencies Act, pandemic lockdowns and restrictions, absolutely all total nonsense. All of it. There's a difference between rural and urban. And the big difference between rural and urban is it's, of course, smaller, and the idea is that you know people and you can see what's going on. In Bonnyville, I witnessed 6 people we had no COVID. So let's get that straight. We had no COVID, we had like 6 cases of COVID in the whole CA, like in the whole area. Then they vaccinated. We had 6 people die in a week. No lie. We saw 7 or 8 miscarriages, it's actually 7, in 1 month in the Bonnyville Hospital. 6 months after the injection. So, am I saying that that's what it was? Absolutely not. But here's what I'm asking you. The leading cause of death in Alberta is unknown causes. I just saw in the ticker the other day on the news thing that the fertility rate in Alberta is at an all-time low. What did the Pfizer report say? The Pfizer report said fertility issues and heart issues, and people were dying. The problem with that whole thing is that nobody's checking to see why that's happening. That's also unheard of in our day, my dad's thing. If people were dying and they didn't know why, they would be looking into it. They would understand that that's a problem. And if women are losing babies one after the other, they would also be looking at that. Next slide, please. All right, so the outcome of everything that they've done to us, so COVID might have been a distraction so they could print the $575 billion. So they censored us, they're taxing the hell out of us, and don't think that's an accident. They understand how much money we make. They know all the stats. They know that the kids that bought $600,000 or $700,000 houses at 1.5%, when it gets to 5%, their payments are going to increase $2,000 a month. They totally understand that. They understand that before they're going in. Our freedoms are at risk, and what's the next thing they're going to do? Next slide, please. They're going to take away our guns. Always the first step to big trouble. Always the first step to big trouble.
Yeah.
It is the beginning of you going to own nothing and be happy. The first thing they take is a gun, which is private property, which is the stepping stone, the gateway drug, if you like, to taking all of your property. Next slide, please. Premier Smith said in Bonneville, I believe we have a right to bear arms, and I believe we have a right to self-defense, so know that help is coming. Next slide. I'm not American, but they fought a civil war in 1776. They understood what it was like to live under tyranny. They understood also what it was like to defeat the strongest army in the world at the time. And they understood at that point that a well-regulated militia, which is a citizen's army, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Next slide. And here's the reason, and this is Mao. All political power comes from the barrel of a gun. The Communist Party must command all the guns. That way, no guns can ever be used to command the party. If you cannot defend yourself or your property, do you have freedom?
No, you do not.
Absolutely not. Next slide. Okay, situational awareness. Now be aware that your situation changes and can change. And that's what's happening here. This is a picture of 1943 in Nazi Germany, and it's about the situation, and I know Nazi things are out there, but this little boy, I saw this picture, and I looked at that little guy and his mother, and here's the thing, this is what this is about. They had 10 years to get out of there. All the things that were happening there are happening here now.
That's right.
Every single thing. Yeah. Propaganda, they took the news media, first thing they did. When you only get your information from one place, you don't know what you don't know. What's changed from when we were talking about my dad's time is that we no longer have freedom of the press. It was their job to keep an eye on politics. It was their job to keep an eye on politicians. We no longer have that. What we have, and now, it's your job to keep an eye on politicians. Where before it was so much easier. And that's what happened. We had a culture that was depending on the press to take care of our politicians, and now that's done. So now what's happening is people are not doing it themselves. And that's where I really believe a big part of the problem comes in. So what did they do to the Jews? Let's talk about the Jews. We go back to the money part. The Jews were the richest people in Germany, also the most educated. They didn't think that anybody could do this to them. So they sat there and they waited for it to get better. I don't think we should sit and wait for it to get better.
Here, here.
I see this very clearly. I've been seeing it very clearly for 3 years, and it is getting worse and worse and worse in lockstep. We're seeing it. It's our responsibility to stand up and say no. Now that little boy there, because his mother didn't pay attention to the situation they were in, probably didn't make it through the next day because they did get shipped to Auschwitz. Wow. These people did get shipped to Auschwitz. Wow. That gentleman in the top right corner was actually executed in Nuremberg, and he was hung for killing thousands of Jews by himself.
Wow.
All right, so let's go back to the money. The Jews were the richest people in Europe at the time. These particular Jews, by taking all the possessions from the Jews, how much of Hitler's war effort do you think that paid for? 40%.
Wow.
40%. And it's always about money. 40%. So that means every plane, every gun, every ship, Every paycheck, every bit of food for millions of soldiers got paid for by euthanizing the Jews for 2 full years. Next slide. This is what happens when you disarm people. There's 100 million people that died there in all of these countries after the people were disarmed. Next slide. Okay, this is the Premier said. The main point is our numbers want more protection for firearms rights, property rights, expression rights, and medical choice rights. That's what we're going to do. That's what she pledges. That's what she said. So this is what we're doing. So what we're doing is we're protecting your rights. It's important to us. And I want you to understand how this all started. This all started in a little room on top of my store, which I call the Crow's Nest. And we had 6 or 7 people around the table, and we decided that we were going to try to put in a new Alberta Bill of Rights. And then we did put it in, and we got notification from the committee, that PPGC, that we had 3 of the top 7 resolutions, and that this one was going to be at Brooks Medicine Hat. Another CA that decided they were going to do the same thing. He reached out to me, Scott reached out to me, and I said, you know what, we've got 3 of the top 7. We'll back you up on this, and away they went. And truthfully, they did all the work. They really, literally did all the work. My job there was to get it in front of people, to get it to important people, because I had access from being involved longer than Scott had, and that's exactly what we got doing. So the point is, it's totally grassroots. Is there any rights in there that you saw that you don't want to have?
That's right.
Like, is there anything in those 22 things that you said, no, this is no good, we don't want to do this? And that's the way I feel too. Our big danger is they're going to water it down to a large extent, and we're not going to be happy with that. We could take the win, but maybe we could ask for more too. So it's going to be incumbent on everybody to do that very thing. Let's not sell ourselves short. They're willing to do it. It's the Premier's idea in the first place. We think that that's the right thing to do, is to make it strong and to make it something that we're proud of, and it came from the people. And yes, we can add to it at next year's AGM or forevermore. But for right now, let's push as strong a bill as we can push. And that's why we're going to take it to the floor of the AGM. If we can do that, and the provincial board will hopefully get it there for us. Yes.
Here, here.
All right, so how do we fight back? Well, we've got to show up. We've got to think big. And I've been chasing people around the province and around my CA for 3 years. You don't understand how important it is to the people that do the organizing for you to show up. And you don't understand how much power you actually have, because I'm going to tell you what I know for sure. If they could have this completely done already, it would be done.
Right.
Understand what I'm saying to you?
Yes,
If they could have this done, it would be already done. They're just passing one bill after another bill after another bill at warp speed. And like I said, it's death by 1,000 cuts, and then pretty soon it's going to be done. So we have to stand up and we have to say no. And that's up to us. That's up to us. And it's up to us to bring more people. That's why I'm really happy that we got 290 people. Last year we had 189 people, so we're growing. That's important. But you know what, actually, I thought I was going to get 600. Yes. I really did. I really thought this was going to be an SGM. I actually lost a bet to Scott Sear. Scott Sear said we'd get 250. I said we could probably get 600, so I owe Scott a bottle. But at any rate, it's still a win. I'm not complaining about it, but I thought we were going to do better. Next slide. Okay. So amending the Alberta Bill of Rights is the start. If that doesn't work, well, then we go to next step. I know most people don't want to think about next step, but next step is always an option. Be aware, losing our gun rights is pivotal to this. Freedom of expression, the first 2 rights that the Americans passed: freedom of expression, religion, freedom of the press, which they thought was mandatory, and the right to bear arms so that we could protect our rights. So remember that. You go to the AGM, vote, and thank you for listening. Take care.
Here, here. Here, here.
here. You've logged a lot of miles.
Yes, I have.
This isn't the first time you gave this presentation.
This is the second time in Calgary in 8 days.
I know. I just want to say on behalf of everybody who's a member of the party, that your contribution is invaluable. We notice it. We appreciate you. And we know you're doing great work on behalf of thousands of people. So thank you so very much. Big round of applause for Mitch Sylvester, everybody. It's absolutely critical to show up.